Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. Welcome back to another live. It is a long weekend here in Canada, and I hope you're enjoying your long weekend if is there one where you are as well. There is a lot to talk about on this live today, so we're just going to get started per usual. Get your pens, get your paper, get your notes. Classes in session, okay? Wait, why is this shaking a little bit? Okay, that should be okay. So I know that the last couple of lives have been very intense, very advanced, and I kind of want to take a break from that a little bit and just lighten things up a little bit. So we're going to do something fun today. We're going to do something I think a lot of people are interested in, and it's going to be a little bit of a show and tell, okay? So again, if you have any questions, feel free to enter it in the comment box below. If you're watching the live after the fact, you can DM me or just comment and I will be happy to answer your questions. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to talk about for our little show and tell? We are going to talk about energy readings, tarot readings, if you want to call it that, which is what the general public thinks of it as. Let's talk about it. So, if you know my story, let's just go back a little bit. I had my spiritual awakening while I was in law school. I literally moved to another country to start law school, and literally the first day I moved, not the first day, like the first week, I had a spiritual awakening, and that's when the whole process started for me. And within that time period that I was in school, I learned how to read energy. I am a self-taught energy reader. I am one of the best energy readers in the world. I can confidently say that. And you guys said that, not me, okay? If you don't believe me, go to the testimonials. You can read all about the testimonials and what my clients are saying. It's perfect little tea time for this. Okay, so again, I'm self-taught. I learned this while I was in school and while I was studying. It took me about, I would say, 6 years to get to the point where I am at now, where I'm just really good at it. So yeah, that's how I started. My readings, I started with friends and family at first, and obviously I was doing them for free and I was learning. I did mention this before, but there was one reader online on YouTube who I had seen during this time period. I think she was a twin flame reader, and I liked her style of reading. She had numerous decks on the table. She had lengthy readings, and she was very detailed. I can't remember her name. I'm like so sorry. But I really liked her style of reading, and I remember thinking, I'm going to learn to read like that. And this was like early on in my career as a reader. Normally what you typically see is readers, just doing little one deck readings, or they are not that detailed. And she was just so detailed and so thorough, and I loved it. And I was like, I remember like not the little girl, because I was in my 30s, but like I remember young me was like, oh, wow, I wish I could read like that. And now it's to the point where I do read like that. So I guess you can say hard work pays off. It was work to learn to read like this, and it is awesome. Okay, so now I've told you a little bit about it. So now I do paid readings. I don't do readings in person. I generally do readings in person for family or friends. That's it. But very rarely do I do them in person, just because I do not want other people's energy into my auric field. So that's a little background about energy readings and how I got into this. What do I want to talk about next? Let's talk about, you guys know a lot about energy readings and tarot readings, right? They tell you, well, let's just talk about it from my point of view and like how I do energy readings, okay? So the energy readings tell a story. They tell a story of depending on your question, and this is important too. Okay, I'm just going to go all over the place, just try to follow along. But the energy readings tell a story. Hi to everybody that's joined. How are you? The energy readings tell a story. Okay, so if you actually, let's go back a little bit. When you, as a client, are asking your questions for your energy readings, your questions have to be specific. Okay, so I always tell this to my clients, like, make sure your questions are specific. And what do I mean by specific? Hi, Laura Martin, 119X, how are you? Hi, the Book Sisters Book Club, how are you? Your questions have to be specific in an energy reading, okay? Because we are reading the energy. So your question, let's say you want to know about you and a specific person. Your question should be framed as, I want to know about the future or the energy between me and X in 6 months, right? You want to make it something like that. We're reading the energy, or like you want to say, I want to know the energy of me passing my exams next week. So that's how you make sure that your question's like really specific. Again, you want to be clear because Spirit likes very clear questions. I know I've always said that they like to play games, and this is true. So if your question is very like confusing, or if you're saying, what's the energy of me and X in 6 months, and then is this going to happen, and then is this going to happen, they're going to give you an answer that's very like convoluted and all over the place. So you want to make sure that your question, like I said, is very clear and concise. What is the energy between me and X at this point? Done. Next question. Right? So you want to keep it clear so that Spirit can give you a clear and direct answer. And a lot of the time, they don't really even give you a clear answer. They just give you like, I mean, they do, but like they give you more details too, right? Like they love to chat, they love to talk, they'll go on and on. Because think about it, like the spirit world communicates every single day, but a lot of people like don't even listen and don't even talk to them. So they're like, you know, when you come on and you're online and you're talking to them, they're like, oh, let's like chit chat a little bit. So they're happy to talk most of the time, and you know, they're going to give you more than what you asked for. So again, make sure you're leading them in the right direction. Okay, so I know there's another confusion about like who are we talking to in an energy reading, right? Like who's giving the answers? What happens when the card's being shuffled? Like, is the reader really pulling out the cards? Like, how does that really work? And I know as for a lay person, that could be very confusing. And I remember like earlier on in my like career, I was just like, oh, is she really, cards really flying out? Are they like, or is a reader just pulling the cards out? Okay, so how does it work? When you have a deck and you as a reader are shuffling a deck, this is how, I'm just telling you how it works, okay? The cards do come out, okay? The cards come out by themselves. You can ask as a reader for like a 1 card or a 2 card, and Spirit will have those cards fall out. So it is the energy of the card and Spirit that is guiding the card to come out. It's not the reader that's picking the cards. It's not, the reader is just the messenger. The reader is like the third person. So you have the client, here's the client, here's Spirit, I'm in the middle, I'm the reader. So I'm communicating from Spirit to you. So it's literally a game of like broken telephone. So what was I saying? Yeah, so that's how it works, right? So you have to make sure that you are asking the clear questions, and that you are being really specific, and that you are realizing that it's not the reader picking the card. It is actually being very Spirit led. Okay, so again, we're generally talking about tarot and energy readings and how it kind of works. Okay, so there's that. The energy reader is not picking the cards, it is Spirit led. So this is important too, because you as a client need to make sure that you have selected the right energy reader for you. And I do this all the time. I book readings with different energy readers just to see what's out there and just to see if what they're saying is true. You'll see a lot of them nowadays on TikTok. They're on live and they're like, you know, free yes and no's, $10 questions, whatever. Okay. And I'm like, let me just see. Okay. So I did this maybe like a couple weeks ago, and there was this reader and she was using one deck of cards, and she was not channeling at all during the reading. And she also was very disruptive in her environment. Like, it was a live reading, like we're on video, and like at one point her teenage son came in the room, and like they're literally having a conversation, and I'm thinking to myself, this is my time. Like, I literally paid you, and you're having a full out conversation with your son. So you want to make sure that you've selected an energy reader who's going to devote their time and their energy towards you and your questions. That's why it's better if you don't have a reader who is, like doing other things, or they're like in a busy, noisy environment. It's just not ideal. Okay. And that's what they don't tell you. So that's how you're able to spot, like, I wouldn't say a fraud, because some of these people are legit readers, but that's how you would spot an unskilled reader. Okay. Like, when I'm doing a reading, and another thing too, you should pick a reader who is doing a reading and telling you and booking an allotted time space for you to do it. So when I have a client, I tell them it's within 7 business days. I'm not just going to start doing a reading right now on video, you know what I mean? And I'm not in the right energetic state or the energetic feel, and my aura isn't clear. A lot of these readers do that. They're just on live doing readings, have music in the background, which is fine, like that's okay, but like you really need to be in the right energetic state, mindset, auric field. Everything should be very clean and clear. And you shouldn't, like, as a skilled reader, shouldn't just be popping up on a live and being like, let's do a reading like this, like blah blah blah. Like, you really got to be present, sit with the energy as a reader, and then be able to communicate that to the client. So it's a really connection between spirit. Like, again, this broken game of telephone, right? The reader needs to get on the phone with spirit first. And how can a reader get onto a clear connection and the phone with spirit first if they have like their teenage son talking in the background, they have music blasting? It's very hard to do. Okay. Like, anybody who's going to tell you it is, it's not, because there's interruptions. And I'll give you another tip too. So, is this shaking? I feel like this is shaking. Okay, it's okay. So again, it should be clear in the background. There should be like no distractions if you're doing a live reading. Also, as a reader, and this is how you're going to know if you're a client and you're booking, you need to pay attention to the environment that you're in. So if you see readers, again, with this distractions in the background, it's a good indication to you as a client that this is not the reader for you, and they're maybe not as skilled as they are telling you. Because during readings, many things happen. And this is why I'm saying that the energy has to be clear, the environment has to be clean, and the auric field has to be very clear and pure. Because there are things that happen during the reading. For example, in some of my readings, I've had a pen break. I've had a bird hit the window. I've had the phone start ringing. I've had technology fail. I've had paper fly off my desk. I've had, sneezing. And all of these little things, and sure, they may seem like common things, but all of these little instances are spirit led. They mean something, right? So if you have a reader who's completely distracted and not paying attention to their environment, they're not picking up on these additional cues that are going to help facilitate their reading to you. Sneezing means something, right? When the phone rings, right? And if you're in a card spread about communication, the phone ringing is a clue, right? If you're in a card spread about, again, communication, right? And the pen breaks, or the letter or the paper flies off your desk. Like, these are all clues, and the reader needs to be aware of that. So again, you want to make sure as a client that you're looking for a reader who is skilled enough to be able to, 1, read the cards that are in front of them, 2, channel and talk to spirit, and 3, read the environment. So it's very complex. There's a lot going on. People like to present themselves as readers, and which, everybody can read tarot. That's fine. But you want to go to someone who's skilled, okay? Like, you're not paying your money for like mumbo jumbo. You want to pay your money and you want to get answers, okay? So make sure that you're going to the right people and they are giving you the right information. So these are some tips, again, that you can look at. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any questions. So I'm gonna see if there's anything I want to add to that. I don't think so. Like, it's very clear, right? And okay, and like I guess I have a lot of critique because I've seen a lot of readers and I've met a lot of readers, and I'm just like, like, you really shouldn't be charging that amount for like what you're doing. Some of these readers they project their issues into your reading. A lot of these readers, you know, are like $200 for an hour, and then they don't tell you the answer you want to know, or they're not thorough, or they're detailed. A lot of them are putting time constraint on readings. A lot of them, you know, just do simple readings, and I feel like that is twofold. It's like, yeah, they know that they can make the money, and yeah, they know that like they just want to be done with it, right? Because readings are kind of exhausting. They take a lot of time, and they're just doing simple basic readings, and they're thinking that you as a client are not going to know the difference because you have not encountered a skilled or advanced reader. So they're kind of just bullshitting you. But yeah, so those are things to watch out for, okay? Make sure you're going to the right people. They should be able to channel, and channeling, again, in your reading, not only reading the cards. You do not want to go to a reader who is just reading the cards, okay? You want to go to a reader, again, who could read the environment, who's channeling, and who is also reading the cards. That is a full, complete reading. That is how a genuine reading is done, period. Okay, that's how I do my readings. Like I said, I'm one of the best. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, okay, there is this narrative in the spiritual community, and I don't know, and I guess the general collective, that tarot readings are occult, they're bad, they're witchcraft, they're like evil. They're not, okay? Like, they're not. Does this deck look really witchcrafty to you? It doesn't. There are some decks that look, okay, let's break this down a little bit further for you guys. It depends on the reader, okay? If you have a reader who's into the occult and is very like witchcrafty and like identifies as that and is very dark and you know, plays with dark energy, that reader will bring that out in your reading, and they will use cards or they'll use cards that mimic the occult, right? Because that's what they're resonating with. So for example, here's a card. It says Silver Witchcraft Tarot, right? Somebody who's channeling the dark energy or like occult, they would use something like this, right? Because they're identifying with this, and this is very dark colors. So it's again, it's the reader, and it's also like the cards. The cards have an energy of their own. Okay, let me know if that makes sense. That might be a little confusing for you guys to understand. Let me see if I can break down a little bit more. So it's twofold, okay? It's the energy of the reader. The reader can be identifying themselves as someone in the occult, as a witch or evil or dark energy reader. You will know, okay? Then it is the tools that they are using. Are they using cards that are dark energy, occult, and witchcraft? You need to think about that, right? And then that's those type of readings that are identifying as occult and tarot and bad and witchcraft and evil and demonic, okay? Generally, the cards are very like nice. Each card, like, okay, each deck, like I said, sorry you guys if this is confusing, you gotta follow along, because again, people like to think tarot is really simple, and it's not. It's really complex, okay? And people don't talk about that enough. So if this is kind of all over the place, just try to follow along. So we've talked about how, again, it's the reader and how it's the deck, right? So you need to see which kind of decks the reader is using. And you will know when you've booked with a client, like booked with a reader, right? You'll know, I guess, by looking at their social media, like, what is their client like, right? I mean, what is the reader like? Are they more occult, or are they more of the light? I'm 100% of the light. You can see that on my profile. You guys come on the lives, you know that. So my cards will look very different for someone who identifies as occult. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about is each deck has an energy. So yes, we're communicating with spirit, God, universe, call it whatever you like. Okay. That's who the energy reader is connecting to. And what they're using is divination tools. The cards, the tarot cards, are divination tools. Let's just go back a little bit. Okay. We're going to have to go back a little bit. Divination tools, and I learned this in my course at Harvard. I'm certified in divination. Divination tools have existed for centuries, okay, decades. They have looked different over time. For example, some of our ancient ancestors used divination tools like stones. They've used divination tools like playing cards. They've used divination tools like sticks, rocks, chicken bones, animal bones, plants. Anything really can be used as a divination tool if it's done correctly or if it's channeled in the right way. But typically you see these kind of things that are being used as divination tools. As time has progressed, these divination tools have advanced. So for example, nowadays we use tarot cards. Nowadays, the stones, the rocks that you see people using, remember this is show and tell, they're more advanced, they're more polished, nice stones, right? They're not little stones you're gonna go find out in the garden. So things have advanced over time. That's what divination tools are. These are divination tools. They're not occult. They have existed for centuries. Your ancestors have used them. Reading cards or coffee leaves or tea leaves, these have been at play for centuries and years. They're just advanced and they've changed and look different over time. Modern day, we're using different tools and they are typically, again, in the form of tarot cards because they're quite popular. Okay, now that you know this, what was I talking about before? Each deck, each divination tool has their own energy, okay? So for example, if we look at this deck, very friendly, very red, very nice, but then we look at this deck. There is a direct contrast between these two decks, right? There's two different very energies and looks coming out of these decks. Let me show you what some of the cards look like. So there was the other deck. Look how it looks, right? So okay, let me just show you the other deck too. Look at this deck, the red deck. It's upside down, but like, you get the picture, right? It's very friendly. There's little animals, you know, it's really cutesy. So again, each energy has a very different deck. Each deck has a very different energy. And they're going to give you different answers. That's why you want to have a reader who can connect to many decks and who's able to read many decks rather than a reader who is limiting themselves to dark energy decks. If you have a reader who's limiting themselves to dark energy decks, then your reading is going to look very different. It might be very dark, right? It might be very occult. It might be very witchcraft. So again, you want to make sure you have a reader who is able to read multiple decks and is not identifying with the occult and witchcraft. And that's where that narrative is essentially coming from. But we need to drop that narrative because it's not like that. Generally, tarot is not like that. Okay. That is a lot. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me just see. Okay. Let's go to the show and tell. The fun part. I'm going to show you some of my favorite decks. The first deck I want to show you is called Wisdom of the Oracle. And you can see here, look at this. This is a good example. It says divination cards. This is how you know I'm not bullshitting you. See, I know my shit. This is by Colette Baron Reed. She is a well-known designer of cards. This was my first deck that I I think this was the second deck I purchased. Again, it looks very cutesy. It's very nice. It has gold edges and mine are frayed. So you can see that I've used this many times. This is the deck that I always use. It is 100% accurate, this deck. It's very lovely to use this deck. The energy is very sweet. They give you answers and there's a lot of meaning in the cards that you're able to get from this deck. So again, this was my second deck. The first deck was the original Rider-Waite deck that I had purchased, and my mentor at that time was like, you need to get rid of that deck. You're not skilled to use that deck. That deck is very powerful and opens up to a lot of energy. She was correct. I got rid of that deck. And then I started training with this deck first, which was very nice and sweet to train with. Okay, so this is one of my favorite decks. I use it all the time. You'll probably see it in your reading if you book. Okay, so again, one thing I also want to mention is that when your reader is doing an energy reading, they are opening essentially doors and portals, right? Because they're opening a wave of consciousness or a stream of consciousness. So again, that's how they're able to see things that you're not able generally to see. You want to make sure that you have a reader who is skilled in opening those doors and portals and knows how to close them. Once they are open, they should be closed. You do not want a reader who is doing a reading for you and have these, again, like I said, entities or beings or energy transfer or attach to you. So you have to make sure that you get a reader who knows what they are doing and that can open and close this correctly. Okay. The next deck I want to show you is the one I showed you before, the Silver Witchcraft Tarot. I'm going to put like I'm just going to hold it up so you guys, if you want to take screenshots, you can do that. You can go to Amazon, you can get them yourselves. This deck is also very powerful. This deck it has more of a darker energy. I want to say it's like too dark, but it essentially looks like this. This deck gives really good answers. There is a lot in the picturing that can tell you a lot of things. I would say I use this pretty much as the red deck that you saw, the first one I showed you. It's again 100% accurate. They give really good answers in this deck. I love using this deck. It's one of my favorite decks to use. Again, so you can see here, right? This is the standard. It's a standard version of the original Rider-Waite deck. So again, the 10 of Pentacles, right? You're having the same suites here, or the same suits. So again, this is a really good deck. So this is like, yeah, I use these two decks a lot. I'm just telling you, okay, like different decks that I use. This deck, the Moonology Oracle card deck, is a great deck. This deck is good for knowing timelines. So the deck looks like this. It's all pictures of the moon and different phases. But if you notice here at the bottom, it says full moon in Capricorn. So it gives you timelines, right? It's telling you which moon cycle you're in, which season you're in, which month you're in. You can tell from the picturing and you can tell from the wording. So again, I really like this deck for timeline giving. I have a lot of decks, but again, I don't use every deck, right? Because depending on the client's questions, you want to use certain decks because certain decks will give you the answer, certain decks will not. So again, you need to know a reader. You need to be with a reader who is going to give you the correct answers and use the correct decks. One of my next favorite decks, the Magical Herb Oracle. This deck is great, okay? So it has little plants on it. You can see there's different kind of plants and they have their names at the bottom. This deck is good because it gives you solutions. So let's say your client is suffering from like anxiety, or your client is suffering from, I don't know, maybe they're just sick, right? Depending on the card that comes out, it tells you the remedy, it tells you the plant to use, and it tells you how you can use it. It's your job to find the plant. So I really love this deck if a client needs solutions, if they need a remedy or something like that. Okay, let's keep going. This deck, Path of the Soul. This deck is a very high vibrational deck. You'll see from the picturing. A lot of colors, geometric shapes, very high vibrational. This deck tends to give very good advice, very excellent, 100% accurate information about next steps, about where the client is at, and advice. So I love using this deck. I use it almost in every reading, towards the end of the reading, I'd say, because it's very uplifting, it's very positive, it's very high vibe. So I really like to end readings like this with the client. Okay. Let's take a little break from the decks. I wanted to show you the little stones. So I think this was gifted to me. I think my friend gave this to me. Yes, my friend gave it to me. Again, like I told you, right? They were using stones back in the days, but now they just look different. They're like very polished, manufactured stones with little words on them. So here we have luck, we have success, we have happiness, we have peace, we have health, and these can give answers, right? You got to learn how to use them. They are not as simple as they look. There is a method and a way to use stones and rocks. It's a great divination tool. It has a lot of ancient history behind it, like I've told you. So you want to make sure that you have a reader who is not just limited to cards. I see this all the time where you have readers just limited to cards, like I mentioned. But you want a reader who can also channel, and you want a reader who knows how to use other divination tools. Because again, sometimes it's hard to get the answers from just the cards alone. You need to have the specific cards that are going to give you the answers if you're just relying on cards. So that's a nice little break, okay? Like demonic, no. Witchcraft, no. Like, so get that narrative out of your head. Everything I've showed you so far, except that little witchcrafty one, right? Which it's literally called that. Still doesn't mean it's associated with the occult, right? It's how the reader is using them. Okay. This deck, the Kipper deck, I love this deck. This deck I use all the time. It looks like this. So it's basically an image. And then there's a word below it. And initially, I thought this deck was difficult to use, but then, and I had a hard time connecting with it. But then as time went on and I used it more and more, this deck is very accurate. It gives a lot of information and detail. And it is, I think a lot of people know about this deck, but I feel like it's a little hidden treasure. A lot of people don't really use it correctly, but I love that deck. The next deck that I love is the Lenormand deck. This deck looks like this. This is kind of similar to the Kipper, but it's different. So it just has the pictures, and you'll see at the bottom, they have the card deck, right? Like the playing card decks and the different suits. So that's what I was saying. The original readers, or like back in the day when they didn't have these type of decks, they literally played with playing cards. So you have to have a reader who is familiar can go back to the basics, okay? You need a reader who's able to read the actual playing card suites or suits. That's how you're gonna know if they're a legit reader or not. They know how to read from playing cards. So you have the playing cards there at the bottom, and this deck is pretty accurate. It gives a lot of information. This deck is a little tricky to read, I must admit that. Just because the way, okay, I'll explain this at the end of when I'm done with my show and tell, but the cards interplay with each other. So this deck is a little bit tricky because it plays a little bit differently with the other cards depending on what you're using. Okay. The last deck is my favorite deck. It's a basic, is it by Rider-Waite? It's not by Rider-Waite. No. It's by Lo Scavero. So this is the black and gold deck. This was gifted to me, I think for Christmas last year. I love this deck. This is like, I would say it's like a luxury deck. It is gold foil and black. It is like the original Rider-Waite deck, like with just the suits, like the wands, pentacles, swords. Sorry, it's going that way. It literally looks like that. I love this deck. Again, very accurate, very, very powerful deck. I don't use this deck too often just because the energy is extremely powerful, and I can get the answers from the other's deck. If I really need something really straightforward and direct, you know, if there's any confusion, I will revert to this deck. But again, do you see how the energies, like each deck is giving off a different energy? That's what I'm talking about. You need a reader who knows the energy of each deck, because each deck releases a different energy in your reading, and you need a reader who can manage the energies correctly. Especially if they are using multiple decks, the energies interplay with each other. And I'll talk about that in a second in our remaining time. But I love this deck. Okay. There's one more deck I want to show you, which I am sure you are all familiar with. It is the original playing card deck. Literally the original playing card deck. This is a deck of cards that I got from Las Vegas. Oh, the back fell off of this one. I like spilled water on it, so some of the backings came off, but it's from the Bellagio. You can see they've cut the edges so you can't use it. And this is the original suits, right? You've got to be able to know how to read this. I literally write it at the top and I write what it means, but you know, just to make it easier. But again, the original decks were playing card decks. This is what people use. So your reader should be able to use this. I love using these in readings. They are very accurate. It's fun to use. It just brings a modern twist to things. And again, I mean, it's a simple playing card, but this goes back to what I was telling you, where literally everything can be used as a divination tool, even a package of pencils, right? You just need to know how to use it correctly and know what everything stands for. Okay, so that was my little show and tell. I hope you guys like that. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, those are some of the decks I use. I have a lot more decks, but these are my favorite. These are the ones I wanted to show you and talk with you about today. So I want to briefly talk in the last few minutes about how the energy interplays. And I've mentioned this before when I was talking about, I think it was one of the other lives where I was talking about crystals and how the energy, you don't want to mess around with crystals if you don't know what you're doing, because each crystal gives off a different energy. When the crystals are together, they interact and they play off of each other, and you don't know the type of energy that they're giving off unless you're like some sort of crystal expert, okay, which I'm sure you're not. So you don't see me playing around with crystals. I hardly wear crystals. I don't have crystals all over my house. There's nothing like that going on, and I'm a skilled professional reader. So what are you doing with crystals? Tell me. You should be doing nothing. Okay. It's the same thing with cards. If you, you guys are probably like, you're not making this fun, you're giving too many warnings. But yes, I'm giving warnings because a lot of people in the spiritual community don't. A lot of them are trying to sell you things. A lot of them are trying to make everything very modern day and mainstream when it's not. Again, there are divination tools. They are called that for the reason. They are to access the divine, essentially. The cards are like crystals. They play off of each other. The energies play off of each other. So if you have a spread with 100 cards on the table from multiple decks, you have to learn to interpret the story and the imagery and the messages in the correct way, because the energies will play off of each other and tell a different story. That's how I read, right? You've got to learn how to read like that. That's the only way to pretty much do it. Some of the, like, it might be difficult to read. Like, I'm not going to lie. It's, if you have like 100, 200, 100 card spread with multiple cards, it's not linear. A lot of readers, I'm trying to explain this the best that I can to you guys. I'm so sorry if it's not confusing you, but I think most of you will get it. If you've had a reading from me, then you will get it, what I'm talking about, because you'll visually be able to see it. The readings aren't linear. Your readings should never be linear, meaning like this is the start of your question, here's the end solution, right? Like the reading plays into each other. It is circular and it is a story. It is a bigger picture. So you need a reader who can zoom out and read the bigger picture, because all the questions link to each other. It comes full circle. And then you'll always hear me, like, this is why I'm so blown away when I do energy readings. And if you've booked a reading with me, then you know I'm always like, see, like, you can't make this shit up. It all connects. It tells a full big picture for you. And you need a reader who can see the bigger picture and who can connect the storylines. Most readers don't do that. They just tell you, like, here's the answer to your question, done. Like, you know, the imagery in the pictures connect. The messages in the different questions connect. It brings together a full board, a full spectrum of what spirit is trying to communicate to you, in addition to what's going on in the environment, in addition to what you as the reader is channeling. So again, it's very, very complex. It is skill, it is practice, and it is work. It is not something to be taken lightly. I guess which is like everything that I say that I've talked about so far in these lives, right? Like I always want to give you guys that warning and let you know, like, none of these things are to be taken lightly. Everything is to be taken seriously, especially when you're working with the other realms and the divine and higher consciousness. It is no joke. I cannot stress that enough. There is a lot of risk involved. I've talked about this so many times. I literally do not want to repeat myself, but some of you just do not get it. And I see so many people like, you know, let me do a 1-card reading for you, a 1-card pull. It's like, why are you going to waste your time? Get the full answer. Get the answers that you need. Go to somebody who knows that what they're doing, what they're talking about. Don't play with these things if you don't know what you're doing. I guarantee you that most of you do not know what you're doing. I know that a lot of people want to experiment and play with them and learn. That's fine. Do your research. Use discernment. Literally take the time. Go to the library, go to the bookstore, get some books, read up about it. I would start there. I would 100% start there. If that's what you're wanting to do and wanting to learn how to use divination tools, I would do a research. I would go to the bookstore, get some books, learning to read tarot. What does this mean? What about divination? What can I learn? How to read properly? You know, back then when I was doing this, there wasn't all of those tools available. Like I said, I was learning from other readers for free on YouTube. There wasn't a lot of books or publications about these kind of things. I was reading people's blogs on the internet. But now there's free resources. There's people coming on lives like I'm doing who are talking about these things. So again, you should make an effort and you do your due diligence to learn these things yourself. That is one step, right? Is getting books or free resources. Another step, and this is like exactly what I did, right? I didn't just jump to the cards right away. I started learning first, then I started watching the videos, then I became certified. Take a course. Some courses are free. Like I told you, I took the divination course. I learned a lot. I learned the history behind it. I learned how to use things correctly. I've learned how they've changed over time. I've learned how the different energies work, right? How they are able to access the divine. Why are they able to access the divine? Like, these are questions you need to ask yourself. Don't just run to a deck and be like, give me the answer. Like, it doesn't work like that. As much as people like to tell you that it works like that, it doesn't work like that. Okay? It's a skill. It's a practice. You need to cultivate it. It's like anything else. You need to essentially go to school. So, okay. After I would say you've done all of these things, then I would say maybe start with a deck. Pick one that is calling to you and start learning that way. Don't just rush into this. It takes time and it's very complex. There's multiple layers to it. Like I've told you, with everything in spirituality, it's not as linear as people like to make it seem. It's very multifaceted, very complex, and very, very tricky. Okay, so you really got to know what you're doing, and you really got to be seasoned in this to be doing these kind of things. Is there anything else I want to tell you guys? I'm just trying to think. I feel like there's something else I want to say. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. If you want to book a reading with me, you can send me a DM, or you can click the link in bio. I am going to probably increase my prices maybe next year, so this is a good time to get in. If you would like to watch the live, it's on YouTube. It'll be posted after. You can join our email list. You can also sign up for private mentoring. All of that is available to you. I don't know. I just want to talk, like, again, I want to say, like, just be careful, do your due diligence. I just want to go back to this again. I can't stress this enough. There's a lot more involved in a reading than you think there is. There's a lot more involved in a reading that people don't talk to you about or don't tell you about. I've told you before about opening and closing the doors, how to reading the doors and the opportunities correctly that Spirit is providing to you, the channeling that's involved as a reader. But there's too much that you need to know, and I just think that it's not being communicated correctly in the collective, and I think that someone needs to say something. So I've said something, and I've given you a taste of how complex and how much work is involved in an energy reading, and I think that you should really consider some of the points that I've said and really look into them. And you will see, like, shit, this girl's right. Okay? So, there was something else I wanted to talk about. I literally cannot remember what it is. I don't know. It will probably come to me as soon as I get off of this live. But let me know if you guys have any questions. We're on for another few minutes. Let me see what else I can rant about for a bit. Other divination tools, do I use any? Let me think. No, I don't really use any. I hardly use the stones, to be honest. I just, like, maybe, I rarely use the stones. I mostly channel and I use the cards. I find for me that gives a complete picture and that gives a lot of accuracy. Do I think that there are a lot of frauds out there and people who do not read correctly? Yes, but who am I to police them, right? That's their own prerogative, which they can do, and you as a client, you have to know how to filter, and you have to know how to use your discernment. I've given you some tips and tricks in this live that you should be able to utilize in helping you select a correct reader. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I want to say about this right now. Let me know if you guys want a part 2 or if you want to learn more. Do I teach people how to read? No, not at this point, because I have not yet met anybody who is at that point or who is that far advanced, who is going to be able to learn how to do this. Most people on my in my audience are conscious. I wouldn't say that most of them are awakened, and we talked about this difference in the last live. So I don't feel like the general collective is there yet. I will know. I will know. And when that time has come, we will go there. But for now, just keep doing what you're doing and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And let me know if you guys have any questions. Again, all resources, all links to anything you need from me is in the bio. Feel free to send a message. I will respond. And I love you. Bye.